What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. For the last couple of days here, I've been kind of stuck in the 2700s, trying out a lot of different teams, but none of them able to break through that 2800 barrier. At least not until today, when I tried out a Shadow Gligar, Furret, and Tinkaton team. This team was a huge core breaker to a lot of teams that I saw in the meta, and because it has a lot of neutral play, it was very fun to use. Let's get into the battles and see what this team can do. Alright, getting right on into the first game of the day. Furret against Dusclops, one of the best lead matchups we could possibly see here. Our opponent swaps out instantly into a Shadow Primeape, a Pokemon we don't have a great counter swap into, but our Tinkaton should be good enough to whittle this down where we don't lose switch advantage, and as long as we keep our Furret against that Dusclops, we should be in a fantastic spot. Bulldoze coming through, our opponent can shield us up, but they might also survive if they want to no-shield and play out that zero-shield matchup, which is what they opt to do. I will have to go down shields to keep switch, but I think that is a very worthwhile trade. Furret is one of the best answers to Dusclops, and because Dusclops has Ice Punch, our Shadow Gligar wants to stay as far away from it as we can. Dusclops does come back in here. They're at 3 hexes. They have a Shadow Punch ready to go, but not before a Play Rough will chop them down quite a bit. In comes a move. They do let it go here. They're just going to sack this Pokemon, maybe just use it as a way to chip down our Tinkaton and maybe have some energy for the backline, but I would never expect a shield from this Pokemon. Bulldoze comes through. It puts them down to about a third of their HP. They build up as much energy as possible before throwing the Charge Move here. I've chipped them down quite a bit, but our opponent has a lot of energy. Shadow Punch knocks us out, but Furret can come in here, absorb the energy, I guess. I'm surprised they're throwing any sort of energy into our Furret. Likely they don't have a great answer to us in the backline. Ice Punch chips us down just a little bit, and in comes a Diggersby. Now, while Shadow Gligar is not the best matchup into Diggersby, it's also just pretty neutral here. I don't necessarily need to win this matchup, but I need to make sure that this Diggersby either uses shields or gets stripped down as much as I possibly can to make it so our Furret in the backline can sweep the game. In comes a dig here into our opponent. This move is either going to draw a shield or do a heavy amount of damage into the very bulky ground-type Pokemon. Our opponent opts to shield it up, which is fine by me. I have super effective Trailblazes in the backline if I need to throw them against this Pokemon. We actually survive the Fire Punch as well. We can go for another dig right after, and I know if they go for the shield on this move, I can still Trailblaze them. If they let this go, then potentially they're going to be very low in the endgame matchup. They're in range now where a Trailblaze could knock them out. They go for a move against us, and I'm going to call that it's a Fire Punch bait. That's exactly what it is going to be here. And while Furret is low on HP, we have a lot of energy loaded against our opponent. Trailblaze coming through. Do we get a shield here, or will our opponent let this go? They do shield. They have enough energy on this Diggersby that they want to keep investing in it right now. I know they're not quite at another Ice Punch on that Dusclops, but they're very close. I don't want to give them any chance to throw the move, so we're going to instantly Trailblaze them here, ramp up our attack stat one more time, and try to either farm them down or reach a move if we can. We're doing a lot of fast pressure. Our opponent not quite able to reach a move before we Sucker Punch down. Furret able to close out that game. GG to our opponent. Next game, Shadow Dragonite in the lead. Very neutral matchup here, although I think in the 2 shields they can go for a full farm down against us because of how much damage these Dragon Breaths are doing into us. In comes a Swift against our opponent, likely going to draw a shield. Shadow Dragonite, one of the squishiest Pokemon in the game, but no, actually, they're going to opt to no shield. I guess one of the few moves that a Shadow Dragonite can survive here. They reach a superpower, which we shield up and farm down. At this point, we have a very healthy Furret, 2 Pokemon in the backline as well, that we likely can use to our advantage, but they come in with a Wigglytuff of all things. Honestly, a little bit awkward here. I would love to be able to keep our Furret for the backline, but because I know Shadow Gligar doesn't have a great matchup saying that our Fury Cutters are resisted into the Fairy-type Pokemon, I'm just going to let this go, get our Tinkaton lined up into this Pokemon, and hope that Shadow Gligar has play in the back. Actually get his shield there as well with that Swift, which is fantastic to see, but a Talonflame in the backline is going to make things very tricky for us to win. Another Pokemon that resists Bug-type damage. I guess our whole team resists Bug-types here, so I'm going to hope they're not on Flame Charge, and they throw a Fly, which I guess at this point implies to me that they are on Brave Bird, which might help us out a little bit. Means that our Tinkaton does resist all the damage this thing might throw, and Aerial Ace here is going to draw a very early shield from the Talonflame. We reach another one right now, and I don't think they can farm us down before I get to a third attack. So honestly, there is still a little bit of play for us in this game, as long as somehow I can knock out this Talonflame with our Tinkaton. In comes a charge move here. Fly is going to knock us out, but because they're throwing these flies here, they don't have enough energy to potentially reach a Brave Bird, at least not just yet here. Our opponent going to overfarm. They have enough energy for a Brave Bird right now, but if this play rough is enough damage to knock out the Talonflame, we might still be able to win this match. It is going to knock them out here, which means now this Wigglytuff is going to have to try to take down a Steel-type Pokemon all on its own. There is no chance that this Wigglytuff can ever knock us out here. I have Play Rough ready right now. This should knock out the Wigglytuff or put them into Bulldoze range. We did get debuffed, so maybe not quite enough damage here. Our opponent at this point is not too happy with how this game's playing out, and comes a Fairy Wind damage, and we can win the game somehow with Tinkaton taking down a Talonflame. Next matchup, Kommo-o in the lead. All right, that is a very tricky Pokemon. A much worse Dragon type to see than the last one we saw here, and a Scizor as a counter swap into our Shadow Gligar. It's not the Shadow Scizor, so they can survive moves just a little bit easier, but also the fast move pressure against us is not quite as important. We can actually shield and maybe farm them all the way down now, because as long as they don't get a Night Slash boost here, even a Trailblaze boost is not going to help them enough to farm us all the way down the longer this matchup goes. In comes our next charge move here. I know I want to flip switch at all costs. That Kommo-o in the backline is a Pokemon that our Tinkaton would absolutely love to see, and no matter what here, our Gligar is going to flip switch. They actually let that go. Now an Aerial is going to throw against this Kommo-o. Do we get a shield, or will our opponent sack it? No, they do shield, which means now we just get switched for basically no cost here, and in the backline is going to be a Tentacruel, a Pokemon that honestly Furret's not necessarily the best into, but also Tinkaton has a lot of play with Bulldoze, and it's not also the worst matchup for us, right? We have a lot of neutral play into them. It's just not necessarily good because we don't have any type effectiveness back or forth against this Pokemon. In comes a move against us. It's going to be a Sludge Wave. We call it properly here. And by shielding that move, they have almost no play remaining. Our opponent realizes that and ends up quitting out. GG to our opponent. Next game, another Dusclops. We've seen this matchup play out before in the video. Our opponent this time instantly swaps out into an Azumarill. And I mean, I do have a very hard wall to the energy in the backline with our Tinkaton, but I can also go for a trip and dip with Trailblaze, because somehow Azumarill actually makes the Tinkaton matchup pretty close just with the amount of fast move pressure they get against us. I'm going to go for the Trailblaze and dip, hope that that puts them into single play rough range here, but honestly at this point, Azu is pretty bulky. There is a chance I need to throw 2 attacks to knock this Pokemon out. In comes the play rough. We do take about a third of our HP so far from the charge and fast move pressure we've taken, but because we are going to likely be able to keep switch advantage against that Dusclops, we should still be in a very good spot. Not quite enough to farm them all the way down here. This Azumarill is getting kind of close to another move at this point, and these bubbles are adding up against us. Play rough putting us down to the range where the next move could knock us out. I'm not going to let them get there. I don't think I can quite Fairy Wind down all the way, so Bulldoze will come through, knock out this Azumarill, or draw the shield. No, they do let it go, and now likely seeing that Dusclops come back in to farm us down. In comes that Dusclops. We can outpace them here to a play rough. I think unlike the first game that we saw at Dusclops, this one might actually be able to go for a full Hex down, which could be kind of scary, saying that Hex damage is going to be enough here to get them basically 100 energy coming out of this matchup, and our energy, or our Shadow Gligar in the back, doesn't want to see this energy, so I'm hoping that whatever their final Pokemon is, Gligar has play into it. And I mean, this isn't the worst case scenario. It's not necessarily the best matchup for Shadow Gligar, but the thing is, it's going to be very playable for us here, and Mandibuzz on Snarl doesn't have a lot of fast move pressure. They go for an Aerial Ace very early on in this matchup as well. Interesting play in my opinion. I was always expecting a Dark Pulse or a Foul Play, but Aerial Ace is doing a lot less damage. In comes the next move here. Dark Pulse is going to chip us down into the red, but because we did no shield that Aerial Ace here at this point, we should be in such a good spot where we can just chip this down, maybe get shields here with our aces, and Fury Cutter is kind of shredding through the HP of this Mandibuzz, saying it's a non-stab bug type move. In comes another Aerial Ace. Our opponent will shield this up. Good play by them, and they make a good play where they go for an instant throw against our Shadow Gligar. In comes a Shadow Punch. I can swap out now into our Furret, and if they're going to let us here, might as well snipe down their energy by going for a Trailblaze. This means now my attack will be boosted. I still have a shield remaining on my Furret, and I can get to a couple Swifts against a Mandibuzz, which at this point, they've used all their shields on Aerial Aces. Boosted Swift's probably going to do just a little bit more damage than those Aerial Aces would have. In comes the first Swift. Our opponent has no shields remaining. The next one might not be quite enough to knock them out, but I know Furret's fast move pressure as well as Gligar's will be enough to put them into a range where the next Swift would be enough damage. They go for another Aerial Ace here, not going to do enough damage to knock us out. We can shield this up, go for one more Sucker Punch, go for the Swift here in just a second. And our opponent is going to have very little HP remaining on this Mandibuzz. Swift coming through, our opponent is likely going to survive this just barely, but we can still farm them down with Sucker Punch damage and just barely take the win. GG to our opponent. Next game, Furret into Diggersby. All right, not a bad matchup here, although it's way closer than you might expect, saying we do have super effective Trailblaze against them, and saying that our Furret has a lot of fast move pressure just because Diggersby is so bulky, and it does have a chance also, if they go for a very early Scorching Sands, to debuff our attack stat, so that can neutralize my attack boost if they happen to get it, but it's only a 30% chance to happen. Let's see what our opponent's going to get. Our opponent going for the Scorching Sands, and they get the attack drop, which does make this matchup just a little bit more awkward here. They end up going for the Fire Punch as well, which means that I do have to shield this up if I want to keep our Furret around, and it seems like at this point, our Furret is a very good Pokemon into our opponent's team. The way they're playing this out, they're playing like they are just a little bit scared of our little ferret. In comes our Trailblaze right now. This should knock them out or draw a shield. They let it go, and in comes a Golisopod. I didn't quite see the fast move on this Pokemon here. Might be Fury Cutter, might be Shadow Claw. our opponent is going to try their best here to use this as a very strong Pokemon into our backline, because, I mean, while Shadow Gligar does have our flying type damage into them, it is also going to take super effective damage from the water type moves from this Pokemon, and our Tinkaton gets kind of heavily outpaced here. They catch a move on Dusclops, so yeah, I guess it was a good thing we kept for it around, and that we also baited this Pokemon out with our Tinkaton, but this endgame is still going to be just a little bit dicey here. Our Shadow Gligar has to worry about both Ice Punch from this Dusclops as well as Aqua Jet from that Golisopod. In comes a Play Rough into the Dusclops. We already landed one here. The second actually puts them deep into the red. They're forced into throwing energy here. We almost have another move on our Tinkaton, but also our Switch Clock might be back up here in just a second. I'm going to try our best to make them throw energy into us here, though. I know they're forced to throw a move before I get my next attack. In comes the Ice Punch. They maybe were expecting a catch there, but because now we can swap out, go for a Swift here at the last second. This either draws a shield or puts them into Fury Cutter downrange for our Shadow Gligar. In comes the Swift. Our opponent shields it up, which means now we can just reach an Aerial here, knock them out, and hopefully Fury Cutter down the rest of that Dusclops in the backline. This game should be ours as long as they don't get to a second Aqua Jet. Our opponent, okay, hold on, they do get to a second Aqua Jet here, but I think Shadow Gligar can still survive this attack. It might be kind of close, though, if that Dusclops can get to a Shadow Punch. In comes our Aerial Ace. This will knock out the Golisopod. No catch was able to happen on our opponent's side. We have a lot of fast food pressure left on our Gligar. They did not have a move loaded on that Shadow Dusclops, or in the regular Dusclops there, rather. We're able to win the game. GG to our opponent. Next game, Shadow Gligar on the opposing side. Very interesting matchup here. I know that our fast food pressure is going to add up quite a bit, especially in the 2-shield scenario, to make it so all we need is one Swift to land to knock them out. I'm going to instantly go for the Swift here. Our opponent might shield. No, they let it go, and they come in with a Blastoise of all things. Very interesting Pokemon. I'm going to go for a Trailblaze here. Unfortunately, not the best timing by me. Trailblaze is going to try its best to either get a shield or chip down this Blastoise. It does, in fact, draw the shield, and now Tinkaton is going to come in to absorb all the energy that we can. In comes the Hydro Cannon. This is going to not quite two-shot us here, but it will put us down to about 60% HP. Another Hydro Cannon already is reached. Blastoise, one of the spammiest Pokemon in the game. Hydro Cannon number 2 puts us into the red, and now if we can get to a Play Rough here, we're going to chip them down as low as we can, but it is going to be a very close matchup whether or not they're going to be able to survive. Play Rough comes through. Our opponent does survive on what almost looks like 1 HP there. They come in with a Shadow Claw Golisopod, so they can actually fast move us all the way down before we're able to get to another move. With that said, in comes a Bulldoze. Maybe I can get a debuff. That would be kind of nice. No debuff ends up happening here. We lag a turn, which means one less Sucker Punch of damage ends up registering on this Golisopod. Hopefully that's not going to matter here. Shadow Claw damage not able to farm us down before we can reach this Swift at least, but this will be a very close game. Swift comes through now against this Golisopod. I have to go for a 2-shield Fury Cutter down if I want any chance to win this game. I know our opponent is going to be very close to another move, but this farm down is going to be about as close as possible here. Our opponent reaches a move at the last second and thinks of that one Sucker Punch that I was not able to get against them earlier on in this game. That might just lose us the match. They still have energy on this Blastoise. If I could still have my shield remaining for this move, we could chill this up, farm down, and double Aerial Ace their Gligar. But unfortunately for us here, they did have that energy loaded. Because I had no shields remaining, we now basically one-shot by the Hydro Cannon, and their Gligar finishes us off. Ace knocks us out. That one-turn lag costing us this game. Unfortunately, I guess GG to our opponent. Sometimes that's how the Go Battle League works. Next game, Shadow Dragonair. Pretty neutral lead matchup. I know at this point, Sucker Punch is going to add up quite a bit over time. They might go for Wrap against us here the longer this goes on too. But no, our opponent actually goes for a nice catch on their own for it. And the thing is, I do have a great answer to this with our Tinkaton. But I also feel like potentially playing this matchup out and then keeping our Tinkaton for that Shadow Dragonair in the backline could also be a pretty good play. And comes a Swift into the opposing for it once again. It puts them into the red here. Our opponent could go for a Trailblaze or for a Swift. Honestly, if they go for a double Swift maneuver here, that could be a little bit bad. But no, instead they go for the Trailblaze, which I think sets up a perfect farm down right before they get to another move here. So that's very good for us. We have a lot of energy on Furret. And our opponent now is going to come in with their final Pokemon, actually. So we see their full team. Our Furret has done quite a bit of work across the board. We knocked out their Furret. We've been able to chip down both the Dragonair and this Lantern. And we see that Shadow Dragonair come right back in. Now, this Pokemon does have quite a bit of energy on it, but we can absorb all the fast food pressure on our Tinkaton. Aqua Tail will chip us down. I think 3 of those should come close to knocking us out here. And, I mean, at this point, Fairy Wind is doing a lot of damage, but I'm not sure we can farm them all the way down before they get that 3rd attack off. In comes the next Aqua Tail. Our opponent will be kind of close to the next move, so I'm going to double up on Bulldoze, throw one, then throw the next one against either this Dragonair if they shield, or against that Lantern if it comes back in. In comes a move. Our opponent does let it go. I'm going to go for the instant Bulldoze against this Spark Lantern. Honestly, what a blast from the past this team is. It's Furret, and I guess Lantern Dragonair core. I mean, Furret's not exactly the most blast from the past Pokemon, but Lantern and Shadow Dragonair, 2 Pokemon relics of the past at this point, but they are kind of putting in some work against our team right now. Surf gets a shield from us here. I'm going to go for the Bulldoze because I know at this point if they let this go, I can probably Fury Cutter them all the way down, and if they shield the move, I can go for a dig with our Shadow Gligar. They let it go. Fury Cutters are doing an absolute ton to this Lantern at this point. We can farm them all the way down with our Fast Move Pressure. Surf will not one-shot us, and at this point, Gligar able to take out the Water-type Pokemon. GG there to our opponent. Next game against Yakai, the reigning world champion, with a Diggersby in the lead. We saw this matchup earlier, not the most confident lead for it, but I mean, it's not necessarily a bad spot to be in. He makes a fantastic catch, though, on a Mandibuzz, but we have to keep in mind here, while Mandibuzz will absorb this energy, we have a Tinkaton in the backline. All I need to do here is bank a bit more energy, make sure I have enough energy to use against that Diggersby later on this game, and we can make this Mandibuzz's life a living nightmare. We can make all the energy basically just disappear against this Pokemon, unless they have Shadow Ball, which I don't think I've really ever seen a Mandibuzz run Shadow Ball in the Go Battle League. They're not going to have anything other than resisted damage against us. In comes a move. Once again, it's going to be a foul play into our Tinkaton here, but Play Rough at this point is likely going to draw a shield or nearly knock them out. I would be a little bit surprised to see a shield, but Switch Clocks are desync. Maybe he wants to shield, keep this Mandibuzz for the backline, which is what he does, and he comes in with that Diggersby here, and right before I reach another Play Rough, goes for a Scorching Sands. I'm going to shield this up myself. A shield was used on that Mandibuzz, so at this point, we both used one shield in this game. For it has so much energy, we can go for a Trailblaze against this Diggersby, and we have enough health to survive a Scorching Sands and get to a second Trailblaze if we need to. I'm not all that concerned about Switch Advantage right now. I wouldn't mind keeping it because obviously Tinkaton into that Mandibuzz is a fantastic spot to be in, but I mean also Gligar has play there, and once Diggersby is out of the way, I'm thinking that we have a lot more play with our Tinkaton left in this game. In comes the Trailblaze, down goes the Diggersby. Our opponent could come in with that Mandibuzz, or they show the final Pokemon, and this is a little bit tricky, actually. Golisopod up this much energy is going to be kind of hard for my Gligar to deal with, but I have energy on our Tinkaton. I also know that an Aerial Ace will knock them out, whereas I can survive, actually, an Aqua Jet just barely, but I know a Catch Attempt is the most likely thing to possibly see here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that that is not a lose condition. I overfarm. In comes that Catch Attempt. I underfarm, or undercharge, rather, with this Play Rough to try to get as much farm as possible against this Mandibuzz. We can go for the full Fairy Wind down against this Pokemon, go for a Play Rough, and then an Aerial Ace to finish off this game. We get that full farm down here. We're just one Fairy Wind away from the next move. Our opponent at this point has to let this go. They know I have a Aerial Ace in the backline on our Shadow Gligar, but either way, one or the other, these moves will knock out the Golisopod, and we are barely able to win that game. GG there to Yakai. Next matchup is a Furret into a Shadow Jumpluff. All right, kind of a neutral lead matchup here, but I have two much better answers to this in the backline. I have a lot of super effective damage here with Aerial Ace. Our opponent actually staying in for some reason. Must not have a great answer to our Shadow Gligar. Aerial Ace coming through. Our opponent lets it go, making it so it's going to be so much easier to deal with our Furret later on if we need to. Might as well shield this up. It could be an Acrobatics, which would nearly one-shot us. That is exactly what they end up throwing. And in comes a Blastoise of all things. I guess not the worst spot to be in, but it is a little bit of a tricky Pokemon to deal with, saying that we have already used one shield in this game, and our whole team doesn't really have a way to sponge Water-type damage. We shield up a second time. While we are down 2 shields to 0 at this point, I know that these digs, as well as the Fury Cutters, are going to shred through their HP. Maybe we get a shield back here. We actually do, and now I'm going to swap to our Furret, saying that our Switch Clocks are this desynced. Our opponent going for a Hydro Cannon. We do get 2-shot from this range by a Hydro Cannon, which is a little bit worrisome, but I think we're still in a fine spot because we can go for a Trailblaze here and try to knock them out. If our opponent realizes that this is a Trailblaze, we will likely see a shield, saying there is quite a bit of energy remaining on this Blastoise. They do shield, and they will throw a Hydro Cannon right before my next Swift. Good counting by our opponent. But this Blastoise has been at least kind of neutralized, but what I'm worried about at this point, too, is they might still get to another attack against our Tinkaton. Hydro Cannon will do about 40% of our HP, but Shadow Gligar in the backline might be able to swap in, snipe down the rest of the HP on this Pokemon with an Aerial Ace, and now at this point, I have no idea what's in the backline, but that Jumpluff has been chipped down. We have energy on Tinkaton. We have a decent amount of HP as well on our Shadow Gligar, and there it is. It's a Furret in the back. I could go for Dig, but I think they would actually outpace us with the Furret. I want to guarantee any sort of damage against this that I can, and our Tinkaton at this point is looking to be a pretty good core breaker into our opponent's team. They instantly throw a move. Swift will come through against us. I was kind of expecting a Trailblaze, honestly. If they could have started ramping up their attack stat, that would have made it so that this Furret could have done quite a bit more damage against our Tinkaton, which I think might have been the better play. With that said, we can now take this Swift damage quite easily, go for a Play Rough here in just a second, and that Shadow Jumpluff in the back line is not going to want to take a Play Rough. They used a lot of energy against our Gligar earlier on in this game, so I think we can still outpace them to another Play Rough against that Pokemon. In comes the Jumpluff here, in comes the Play Rough, and this should be enough to knock out the Jumpluff. Play Rough coming through, our opponent, no shields remaining, gets knocked out. Tinkaton having so much play in the back line. GG there to our opponent. Next game for it into Shadow Annihilape. Oh my goodness, that is one of the worst things I could see here. Shadow Gligar, though, as our safe swap, and we were met by a Swampert. Now, while conventional wisdom would say that a water type is not great for my ground type Pokemon, we actually just straight up win the 2-shield matchup here. Fury Cutters add up quite a bit, and up even just a single Fury Cutter is all it takes to outpace this. So going for Aerial Ace here and trying to get either shields down or a knockout against the Swampert the longer this goes is going to be a good thing for us. In comes our next move here. This should knock them out or draw the shield depending on how they want to play this matchup out. Swampert ends up letting it go, and I'm going to be very curious to see what their final Pokemon might be. Our opponent brings it in. It's an Emolga. Okay, so our Shadow Gligar is actually just triple good against this team. Might as well keep that energy for the Annihilape in the back line. Tinkaton as well, it has a lot of play into that Annihilape, so we should be in a pretty good spot this game. The best thing about coming in with Tinkaton into the Emolga is it forces them to go for very inefficient moves like these discharges rather than going for very efficient acrobatics against our Gligar. In comes our next play rough. This should be enough here to knock them out or draw a shield. Really depends at this point how much they want to invest in this Pokemon. They let it go. They think at this point maybe Shadow Annihilape up 2 shields could be enough to win them this game. But the thing is, if I go for this Bulldoze, if I land the move, I think I can fast move them down. If they end up shielding this attack, then I can go double Aerial Ace with our Shadow Gligar. We have so much energy in the bank here. This game is looking pretty over for our opponent. Aerial Ace number 1 comes through. Aerial Ace number 2 going to be loaded in just a second on CMP here with our opponent, but they don't actually have that much energy, so no matter what, they're not getting to a second attack. In comes the Ice Punch. It would have one-shot us, so good shield by us. Aerial Ace now coming through, knocking out the Shadow Annihilape and closing out a game. Our opponent kind of 3 times weak here to Shadow Gligar. Nice 4-1 set here to finish off the night. This is going to get us to a new season high, 2844. Very cool way to end off the day. I know at this point we're within like 150 points of legend rank, although it's still so hard to reach any higher than this right now. I think people in the leaderboard are just barely in the 2900s. No one's hit legend yet this season, so this is about as high up as you can be, unless you have like hour-long queue times and you want to keep on going. So at this point, I'm fine with this, and I'm very happy to end the day off here. All right, well, thank you so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.